Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Wrestling Challenge review series for, on this particular occasion, it is the 29th of January 1989. 1989, my favorite year of all time in wrestling, followed quickly by WCW 92. I, my favorite run is 87 to 92. That, what, 5 year run in wrestling to me is the best time in wrestling, period, across all promotions. Anyway, this wrestling challenge is not as noteworthy as others have been by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly worth a peek for a variety of reasons. They're coming off of the Royal Rumble 1989, the second edition of the Royal Rumble. Man, people cared so much more about pay-per-views back then, and they really felt special. I think you could do one every other month and be fine. These days, I don't think you should do them every month. I certainly don't think doing two a month was ever a good idea. AEW has it down to a bit of a science, actually, but who knows how long until they blow it wide open. Although I think Tony Khan and the AEW crew seems more intelligent at booking and longer term storytelling than anyone on the WWE roster right now. Um, it's funny because when I watch stuff on YouTube wrestling wise, I'm getting advertisements for the Elimination Chamber tonight and other things, and it's just I'm laughing because WWE must be desperate. They can't even get people to watch on the network they've already paid for. Anyway, Bret Hart and Barry Horowitz have what actually is a much, I won't say better match than it should be, but at the same time, kind of. Hart, newly a babyface over the last, let's say, 6 months here, turning on Jimmy Hart, along with Jim Neidhart, turning on Jimmy Hart at right around SummerSlam, about a month maybe or so before. And but he and Barry Horowitz have a much better match than it has business being. Hart hits shoulder tackle and other things. I love the fact Barry Horowitz does a roll back through on the double down thing, and then so hip tosses and some really basic stuff. Hart goes to work on the arm, stays to work on the arm for a couple of minutes. Another thing about Bret Hart that sets him apart is that he stays on body parts. Anyway, Hart manages to continue going pretty assertively, aggressively through, gets a victory here, just under 5 minutes into the program. Hart also really good with a Dory Funk style European uppercut. One thing, Hart's strikes look a lot better than a lot of people's today in terms of, well, it's not so much that they look better, it's that they look believable in a wrestling context. A lot of guys today and ladies go for knockout blows, but if a guy can get up from 7 of them, what's the big deal? Anyway, Hart hits a pile driver, which is my favorite finish he hits. I was more a fan of the pile driver than the sharpshooter, and gets a victory here. Then we go to a Royal Rumble report review with Lord Alfred Hayes. Good gosh, I miss him. He was wonderful. The idea there is they spend about 5 minutes going through the superpose down from Royal Rumble '89. The Warrior and Rick Rude and the baby oil in the eyes. Warrior is unhappy with this. He's talking about getting even with Rick Rude post that. That Rude is nothing more than a mere mortal, and that the Warrior is eternal, etc., and so forth. David Stottlemyre and Rick Allen facing off against the Powers of Pain. They are newly managed by Mr. Fuji by about 2 to 2.5 months here. Warlord and the Barbarian needed a little something extra, and Fuji does give it to them. Actually, that's my favorite time with the Powers of Pain is when Fuji had them. Just kind of a fun run, and I like the run up to them going against Demolition, Babyface Demolition at WrestleMania 5. Of course, that's exactly the time I came into being a fan. Anyhow, the press slam by the Barbarian, and then we see Warlord come in, kind of hit a throw slam. I think Warlord is a guy who wasn't exactly as athletic as he could have been, but he's iconic in that you remember him. more today than you remember half the people on most rosters. Anyway, Warlord hits a diving fist drop among other things, then takes things back over to the Barbarian. Lots of quick tags, even for a enhancement style match here. Warlord sends the opponent into the corner, tag off to the Barbarian. They do the elevated shoulder tackle at a 1-2-3 powers of pain, are victorious. Certainly worth taking a look at that style of match if you want to get a tag team over. There is an event center style promo with the Outlaw Ron Bass. Bass basically saying he's going to get even with just about everyone he can, anytime, anywhere, and mentions his Spurs and kind of the aggression there. Hercules talks about taking out everyone from the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, to just about anybody else. This must have been an off week or in between week or something, because there is not a specific house they're hyping. The Rougeau brothers are up next, and they or actually they're in a Nintendo commercial. Caught me off guard because you just see their finish. Red Rooster up next. Red Rooster, newly baby-faced, probably within the last month or so. And so he goes against Danny Davis, which is an odd little run there. Just Danny Davis by this point in the beginning of '89. As I get my phone, I will be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. But, and I mean, it certainly goes on without saying, the match between the Red Rooster and Danny Davis isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. On the other hand, it's also not a match to write home about. And I think Taylor, who, otherwise known as the Red Rooster, Terry Taylor, who never really found a role in the WWF, and, you know, he wrestled here twice, once in 1988 and once in 1993. His role with that company was much more behind the scenes. His role prior to coming to the WWF might have done him better as a wrestler, and others saw more in him Mid-South and Crockett and the like. Anyway, backdrop, body slam, basic stuff. Nothing, again, to write home about. Certainly his babyface turn. The turn was well executed. I'm not necessarily sure that his run there was ever going to be anything more than, you know, a kind of enhancement situation. He rolls up Danny Davis, 1-2-3, gets a victory. Not a huge surprise with him getting a victory there either. Jimmy Hart beside himself with the frustration point of that. Dino Bravo is up next in an enhancement match. Certainly nothing to write home about there either. Bravo by this point, even in '89, still with Frenchie Martin. He stayed with Frenchie until, I believe, the switch to Jimmy Hart takes place right after WrestleMania 5. Frenchie Martin, I think, finishes up as Bravo's manager the night of WrestleMania 5, because it's Ronnie Garvin who does the Garvin Stomp to him, takes him out almost completely, and away we go. In any event, Scott Casey, the opponent, or looks like Scott Casey, the opponent for this particular day. Bravo, punch, kick, chop, real basic stuff. But then again, Bravo by this point, if you wanted to see his better stuff, you're looking at early 80s in Montreal, not his WWF run. You know, big body slam, and again, he's a guy who I assume was using performance-enhancing drugs at the time, because he's bloated and his body looks kind of out of sorts a little bit. Scott Casey leaves pretty soon after this, and we see a side suplex for the victory. We move to a promo event center type thing. Coco Ware is the target there. He talks about kind of doing the pile driver thing. Does a lot of singing. Coco's a guy I get to see a couple of times on the independent scene, and a guy that could always master a crowd for sure. Of course, that you had to know how to do that working weekly in Memphis anyway. $1 Million Man in the green suit, which is my preference. The majority is the black suit, but the green suit, kind of teal bluish green, always was my preference. Alongside Virgil, basically saying that he has fans, that he just has less than most people. Rick Martel returning. Martel, I think, returned in either December of '88 or January of '89. He is back in time for the Royal Rumble a few weeks before this. He may have even come back at the Rumble. Of course, comes back as a babyface, former tag team champion, both with Tony Garea and with Tito Santana. Tito Santana, known to this crew of folks. He'd been out of action since WrestleMania 4, helping his wife deal with some form of cancer. I don't remember the exact form. Anyway, Boris Zukov is frustrated as the opponent. Martel does some cartwheels and such, basic arm bars, arm locks, and the like. To think that he was, in 1985, 4 years before this, the world champion in the AWA, just really strikes me as odd that he had a very good run in the WWF, don't get me wrong, and to have a run from 87 through 93 is a pretty big deal. It might have even been 94. Pretty big deal. But at the same time, he never had the run that he could have had. I think Vince didn't see, because of his accent and such, didn't see him as a main event style guy, and he suffered because of it. I was able to meet Rick at one indie show in 1997. Super nice guy, totally cool guy, but at the same time, he was, even in an indie show environment, kind of reserved and a little bit less social than you would need to be with fans doing autographs and whatnot than I think a full-time babyface would need to be. Hip toss and then a couple of drop kicks and a Boston Crab for Martel, gets the victory. Then we go to the hype deal here of the Mega Powers against the Twin Towers at the upcoming main event, that coming Friday. Main event being the Saturday night or Friday night hour version of Saturday night's main event. They did a couple of those a year, live in prime time. The year before had been Hogan and Andre for '88. I think they do one of those a year. The year before had been Hogan and Andre, and so obviously that was a big deal. The title switch where Andre gave the belt away to DiBiase, 33 million people saw that. This upcoming week, we would see Hogan and Savage in the same primetime slot. Ultimately, that leads to the breakup of the Mega Powers. Probably for me as a kid, the most historic storyline they ever did. Speaking of historic, Bushwhackers here. This actually might be the first wrestling match I ever saw, because I remember it being a Bushwhackers squash match. And I know I went to a March house show, so I'm pretty sure this might be, if not a Superstars version of same type of match, right around the time that I became a fan as an 8-year-old kid. Actually, it would have been 7 at this point. So, anyway, Bushwhackers, punch, kick, clotheslines, really, really super basic stuff. Knee, actually, there's a knee where Luke falls down after giving a knee to his opponent, which is just, I don't know, kind of goofy. Anyway, top rope shot by Luke, very rare, or actually middle rope, kind of a forearm drop. Kind of interesting there. They do the gut wrench, double slam across the knee, followed by the battering ram, 1, 2, 3, and the battering ram was first in this case, but that combination is there. 1, 2, 3, and we're over. Then we go to I think one of the last matches on the day, King Haku with Bobby Heenan against Josh Stroud. Stroud has been a really good enhancement talent in this time period, probably 88 to 92, maybe 91, 92. He's got a good build on him. They do an inset with Big John Studd here. basically wanting to get even with the Heenan family. Remember, Studd had left in '87, early '87, before WrestleMania 3, and left the Heenan family high and dry. Haku, who usually does only punch kick, actually does a drop toe hold here and does a float over. So more wrestling acumen to Haku in 1989 than imagined. I remember the first wrestler I could have ever laid a hand on, in terms of just pat him on the shoulder, pat him on the back, whatever, was Haku. But he walked right by me and yelled really, really loud, and childhood me was scared to death of Haku. Years later, I'd learned how insane that man truly is in terms of strength and fighting ability, and I learned that my fear of Haku was justified, at least partially, as a little kid. Anyway, Stroud tries to get things going back up a little bit, doesn't get what he wants out of it. Gets enough a little bit, but not fully everything he wants. A couple of shots to the midsection, and needless to say, Stroud tries to get things going back his way. Haku with a back thrust kick. 1-2-3 victory for him. Not a big surprise there. Back to the event center we go. Rockers promising to have a better 1989 than 1988. Of course, they entered around September, October of '88, and they're already feuding with the Brainbusters. My favorite tag team feud of all time, Brainbusters and the Rockers. So certainly I loved that for sure. In any event, the Rockers, and to be fair, I was a Rockers. It was funny. I was a Brainbusters fan all the way, but I liked Shawn Michaels, so I would cheer for the Brainbusters whenever Marty Jannetty was in the ring. When Shawn was in the ring, it depended on if he was on offense or defense. If he was on defense, I cheered for the Busters. If he was on offense, I cheered for Shawn. I was a very weird kid. Anyway, so obviously the Rockers are a mainstay tag team for the next several years. And then we see Jim Neidhart talking about how he's going to have upcoming matches with the members of Jimmy Hart's group, but none of them have any heart, no pun intended. That's the close for this particular program. We will be back with more right after this.